morning, everyone. My name is Margo, Lydon, and I hope that you have, equally as I have, enjoyed Steve's presentation this morning. I'm the CEO of SuperFriend and one of the 3 collaborating partners at this incredible collaboration that we have, the Victorian Workplace Mental Wellbeing Collaboration. And I'd like to start by thanking you, Steve, for your presentation. I certainly found it incredibly engaging and entertaining. But I guess, what I would reflect from this is an obvious opportunity for us today to go back to our workplaces and actually start a deliberate conversation about the UGRs in our own workplace. And I think more importantly than that is about where we take that conversation and how we can, as leaders, not only unpack what the UGRs are that we know and we see, but the ones that we don't see, that our people do see. And then what are we going to do to deliberately perhaps change some of those UGRs that may be unhelpful or unsafe for our people. So I think we've got a great opportunity and I really appreciate how you've brought this to life for us. We do have an opportunity now through a panel discussion to ask Steve some really tough, tricky questions, as well as a couple of other panel members. So I'd really like to welcome to the stage our 2 panel members this morning. Nicole, would you like to join us on stage? Nicole Fauvrelle is from the Department of Health and Human Services. And Leigh, if you'd like to join us as well. Leigh Dunstan is from the Campeyn group. As they take their seats, I'd like to just remind you or refresh your memories around the instructions for Slido, which should be on the screen behind. So if you can go to slido.com and enter the event code of Workplace Wellbeing, one word, type your questions and submit them, and then we'll be able to use those questions to ask our panel this morning. We will be taking questions from the room as well as for our guests who are joining us via the video screening. So I'd like to welcome our panel this morning. Nicole Fauvrelle is the Chief Occupational Health and Safety Officer for the Department of Human Services and has held this role for 2 years. This role encompasses oversight of the health and safety policy, systems and strategy, employee wellbeing and support, and workers' compensation and injury management. Nicole's career spans 18 years in work health and safety, built on an extensive background in criminal law practice, working as a senior lawyer with WorkSafe Victoria, followed by representation and advice to corporate clients in the health and safety space. Nicole has worked with clients on all matters related to workplace health and safety laws across a wide range of industries, including, but not limited to, manufacturing, mining, construction, general stevedoring, transport and logistics and aged care. We've also got Leigh Dunstan joining us, and his work has been with an organisation called Campeyn for the last 7 years, and prior to that he ran his own trade business for 10 years. His role at Campeyn Group is as the General Manager, where he oversees the day-to-day operations of the business. Campeyn Group delivers a range of tailored facility management and maintenance services across many industries, including local government, schools, hospital, healthcare and more. Campeyn Group utilise their own highly skilled and qualified tradespeople for the delivery of trade services. Each client is appointed a dedicated project manager. They have a comprehensive customised support and maintenance facility management service to ensure buildings and facilities are always running smoothly. So Leigh and Nicole are joined here by Steve on stage, and please join me in welcoming our panel this morning. There we go. Fantastic. So we have got a range of questions coming in this morning, and I guess, Steve, what I'd really like to know to start with, if I can, is when you think about UGRs and the practical strategies that employers and workplaces can be engaging with, what perhaps spring to mind is one or two really practical ways that we can start that dialogue, as I mentioned, but then deliberately go about shifting some of those UGRs in the workplace?
So what I didn't tell you this morning is that I'm apologising about this because I have inflicted a curse on each of you. There is no off switch to this, okay? So you will see the workplace slightly differently. So at its most superficial level, I would say to you, be aware of the UGRs. Be aware of the UGRs that you personally are conforming to, that exist in your workplace, and just be aware of that and reflect on your own behaviour. That's at the most superficial level. If you wanted to go a bit deeper, one thing you could do is give your people exposure to the concept of UGRs. At the UGRs website, there is plenty of resources. There's videos of me introducing the concept of UGRs, and there's articles on it. And that can be a discussion prompter for you. And this is still at a relatively superficial level, but you can have conversations about UGRs. One thing, I think part of the power of UGRs is its simplicity. Like, I've literally taught it to gold miners in a gold mine in South Africa. People get it like this. So everyone gets UGRs. So if you give people exposure to it and then have some conversations in the workplace about, and it can be safe. You can say, what kinds of UGRs would we like to have in place in our workplace? I mean, that's still at a superficial level, but that creates some conversation. Raise this from a level of unconscious compliance to consciousness, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Nicole, from hearing Steve's presentation this morning and your experience in your career, where do you feel that, you know, the opportunity is for employers to look at civility and culture within their workplace? What have you seen?
So at the department, we have made a real conscious effort not to focus on using words like, we're going to do an anti-bullying campaign, or focus on inappropriate behaviour. So changing the language that we use to what are we going to do to create a positive workplace culture. I can give, I guess, two examples. So one, personally for me, when I started with the department a couple of years ago, I came into brand new team, a team that had four chiefs in 3 years. And so they were a little unsettled and didn't quite know where they fit. And you could, as soon as I came in, I could see these UGRs sort of play out. So one of the things that I did to begin with was we are really strong on our values at the department. But what I found was that the values generally were just up on the wall. So everyone knew what the values are or know what they are, but they're up on the wall. So we embarked on having a stand-up meeting every Wednesday morning. We still do it now, half an hour. It gives us a way to connect to each other. So everyone got to know each other a bit better. So going back to that culture of care, we bring those values to life. So we spend the first part of that stand-up doing a health, safety and wellbeing values share. So what's happening in the workplace from a health and safety perspective, what are concerns that we have, what interaction did you have with someone either within the team, an external stakeholder, another business unit, what interaction did you have that showed or demonstrated the values that we have? So really bringing those values off the wall. And we share hosting that stand-up. And I guess, and the second thing that we've done as an organisation, it's just trying to have those conversations. So we're an organisation of 13,000 people. So getting people to have the conversation. We recently ran a conversation called the Home Safely Everyday Conversations, which was to provide all of our leaders, from the secretary to all of our managers, and provided them with some materials to initiate a conversation about who do we want to be, how do we want to operate around here, and making sure that was going to be the first of many conversations. So what are the things that we see that we're not comfortable with? What is our team commitment to each other? What are the sorts of things that we're going to put in place moving forward to create a positive workplace?
Thank you. Leigh, over to you, and thinking about back over your career from, trade coming through into the Campeyn group. I'm curious as to hear your perspectives of, perhaps a different industry, a different ways of working, and how you can see, the levers inside your business being utilised to improve culture.
Yep. So we've got, I think now we've probably got about 100 employees, which obviously isn't operating on the scale of Nicole's organisation, but it's going back only a couple of years. We were essentially a company full of tradesmen for the most part. That makes up most of our organisation. And in coming from a trade background, it's not uncommon for, this isn't a conversation that has been had historically. So if someone's got an issue, the line swing by Bunnings and pick up a bag of concrete and harden up is not uncommon. And I'm just being honest. That's just the way they roll. And so to shift over the last couple of years has been quite a challenge for us, because we've actually we've basically doubled the amount of employees with the growth that we've had. So it's been quite a learning opportunity for us on the way through, because as Nicole said, it's easy enough to put the writing on the wall, and we had that, and we still have that, but it means very little if you don't have the UGRs in place. And that's something that we've learned at times the hard way through that period of growth, because I think if we're now starting to really develop those throughout the organisation, and it needs to start from the top. It's very difficult. You can't start it from the ground up. It has to come from the top of the organisation and work its way down. And that's something that we're really now pushing towards that, because it's we've still got a lot of old school tradesmen, but they're really starting to get on board and drive that message, because it just whether it's safety culture or just the way that the customer service or whatever it is, it just has such a massive impact if you can get those UGRs in place. So.
One of the questions is around when you want to change a UGR, but you don't necessarily have the power, you're not necessarily at the top of the organisation. Steve, what's your tips about how does somebody approach doing that? And I'd be interested to hear from you both if you've actually attempted to do that yourselves or have observed that in your workplaces.
So in any organisation of any size, there's going to be different UGRs in different parts. And some parts of the organisation are going to be more positive than others, going to be less positive. So it happens anyway that there's going to be differences. So to a person who says, look, I'm not the boss, and so what should I do? I will facetiously say, well, I think you should give up. And that's very facetious, right? But what's my point? My point is, let's focus on areas of control and influence that you have. And there's natural variation anyway, which tells you that there's natural variation. And so let's focus on your influence and control. And let's, admit you can't change the entire organisation, or maybe the leaders above you, although maybe there is some stuff you can do in that regard. But let's really focus on the influence and control that you have, because you can make a difference to people around you. Each one of us can. It's not the ideal, but...
Thank you. So, Nicole, have you made any attempts to, change some UGRs in your own workplace?
Absolutely. Not very popular, I have to say, sometimes. So, I think that it's what Steve said about being aware. So, be aware of your environment and what those UGRs are. And when you are attempting to change it, you need to do it in a respectful, careful way. And I completely agree with Steve, is that really it's about start off with influencing your sphere of control, if you like. So if I go back to talking about those health, safety and wellbeing values shares, I started to talk to my team about if we were having a conversation or in a meeting, I could see that an interaction was going in a particular way. You choose your time. You might, after that meeting, go to that person and say, hey, was something going on with you today because your interaction with X was a little off today? Or in the meeting, if it's getting a little edgy, shall I say, I'll call it. And once people are used to you calling it, and I expect my team to call it on me, so they know that that's an open
two-way street.
It's a two-way street. And one of the just a great little story is that I had one of my team members a couple of months in, because it's a new team. They're thinking, yeah, Nicole, call out the values. But 2 months in, she came to me. She'd had this meeting. I was like, how did it go? She said, oh, it was fantastic. And here in my head, I'm, jumping to the work outcome thinking she got exactly what she wanted out of this meeting and we're moving forward with this, particular initiative. And I said, great, what happened? And she said, well, there were a couple of people that weren't acting within our values. And in the meeting, I said, you know what, I don't think that that's really, in terms of our conversation, I don't think that's within our values. So can we just tackle this a different way? And she was so excited about the fact that A, that she was able to raise it, and B, the people that she raised it with actually stopped and had a think about it. Those are the little things, the 1%ers that start to affect, I call it the nudge. It's not the shift. You're not going to get a shift. You're going to get the nudge. You keep just gently bumping it, So I think that's sort of the way that she can kind of, start to nudge.
And it's not a shirt front either.
And it's not a shirt front. It's not a shirt front, absolutely.
What about you, Leigh?
I think a lot of the leaders certainly our organisation have, we really try and encourage them to speak up and have a voice, because the difference that they can make potentially is enormous. And that's actually getting them to speak up. It can be quite a challenge at times. And I've probably experienced it myself going back a couple of years, talking about where we came from as an organisation, from that, I suppose, that old school trade-based organisation. Mental health was something that wasn't really discussed openly. It's not so much that the owners of the organisation weren't keen to talk about it, just something that wasn't on the radar. And going back a couple of years, I think we had about roughly 50 employees, and there was 2 people that, as a company, we were aware of that had some challenges. And one of them was on the back of a pretty horrific marriage breakup, and the other one was actually me. So as far as going back to probably 2017, I actually had a window of time where I was probably struggling. And for all of my faults, one thing that's probably a strength of mine is I'm not afraid to speak up about what's going on in my world if there is something that's not quite right. So the owners of the business and my direct reports, they're all aware of what was going on, but I didn't necessarily broadcast it. And I think it was frustrating because I knew there was other people in the organisation, like statistically, there was other people in the organisation that would have had these same sorts of challenges, but there was nothing we were necessarily able to do as an organisation to help because we weren't aware of it. So as it turned out, I pretty much probably had one of the more challenging periods in my life, and I ended up taking a month off. And through that period, I remember speaking to the owner, and I had his full support. So basically, he made it very clear to me that do what you got to do, take as much time as you need, and just switch off. So we'll take care of your emails, your phone calls, and whatever. And my role in the organisation is not that easy to fill just like that, and it did happen overnight. So with that in mind, I felt a real sense of thankfulness and appreciation that I'm lucky enough to work for a company like this that supports you in that way. But there was also a level of frustration that that not everyone was necessarily able to access it because they weren't able to speak up about it for whatever reason. So I sort of came at it with a sledgehammer and sent out an email to the entire company explaining where I was at. And basically, without making it too much about me, just acknowledging that, but also talking about the fact that it's okay to put it on the radar and the sorts of things, the sorts of mechanisms we can use as an organisation to be able to help them. Because it's too often people's performance might drop in that space, or they might be having all sorts of challenges that the people around them aren't actually aware of. So that was, I suppose, a starting point for us. And it's amazing what you can achieve just by starting a conversation. You know, this is about mental health, but it could be around safety culture, it could be around all sorts of things. And it's just about starting that conversation and getting the wheels turning, because from that point, you know, now the subject of mental health at Campeyn is entirely different. We've now got probably 100 employees, and I think we're aware of probably 30 people that we help regularly as an organisation to be able to improve their time during the working day. You know, there's only so much you can do as a company, but we really tried to understand what mechanisms we can use, but it's just about starting that conversation.
Well, I think, you know, that speaks just obviously of your courage and your bravery to speak up and be a really amazing leader and role model for others. And my next question actually leads in beautifully from that, because it's around the cultural levers or the levers inside the organisation we can use to shift the culture. And just hearing your story, to me, you know, clearly that was an amazing turning point for not only you but your organisation to actually bring mental health onto the radar and to really be able to talk about it openly. So congratulations. It's, you know, it's certainly not an easy thing for people to do, but I think what you've done is role model a lever that you've got within yourself to help bring about a cultural change. So Steve, could I ask you, what do you think are the greatest changes or levers we've got inside an organisation to shift a culture?
It completely bemuses me as to why this is not a priority for leaders. So
why do you think it's not then?
Well, I think I know.
Yep.
But my suspicion is that there is not a business case for this.
Right.
And so I think we need to create a business case. Now, I've got the answer for you, because we did some research a little while back where we stumbled across this question, and now I use it as often as I can. The question we asked is this.
Write it down by the sounds of this.
If the culture of your workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? If the culture, now you understand this is putting a left brain engineering angle on culture. If the culture of our workplace was to become as good as it realistically could, how much improvement would there be on people's performance/productivity? And when I do it face to face, and I do it as regularly as I can, I say and stress 0 is a legitimate answer. You might think the culture now realistically is as good as it's going to get. So 0 is a legitimate, or you might say 2 or 5%, whatever. Put a percentage on it, and I'll put that to leaders. I'm not kidding you, on average I get 40% on average. 40%. I say, get excited. The capacity for substantial performance improvement rests at our feet, and it is the culture of our workplace. So then we can logically move to the next step, which is to say, well, what kind of aspirational culture do we want? Sometimes the proxy for that is the values, but values typically aren't thought in the context of the question that I gave to you. So I think we've got to get strategic to craft a business case for culture for those who need it, and there are lots of people who need it, I think. To say there's value in this, and it's not just about being nice and soft and flowery. Now, how brave are you, mate? I mean, that is extraordinary. But how sad that someone has to do that to start ringing bells. You know, seriously. So an alternative would be this business case proposition, maybe.
Thank you. I think it certainly does lend itself to what is it that we are doing as leaders in an organisation, and where is our eye on what ball is it on?
Can I occupy the floor for a little more then? Because here's another terrific question. I love asking this. I say to leaders, if I went to your people and they're being candid and open, you're not in the room. If I went to your people and asked them, what are your top 3 priorities? What would they say? Now, is that a good question or what? I go to your people and ask them, what are your leaders' top 3 priorities? Now they're talking about you, but you're not in the room. What would they say? I did this with Next in the UK to the IT division, 600 people in the IT division. So I'm talking to the leaders. And one of the leaders said, Steve, we don't even know what our top 3 priorities are, so how would they? So the logical next question, because culture never comes out in that, right? So then I say, do we want culture or people or values or some synonym thereof to be a top 3 priority?
I think the world is changing rapidly, and I think most people, if I were to ask you to put your hand up in the room to say, is your organisation going through transformational change or massive change at the moment, most people would put their hands up. How do we manage culture and, you know, perhaps changing the UGRs to be positive UGRs when we're actually, you know, seeing what's coming down the pipeline at us is major change. Nicole, I'm just wondering from your perspective, you will have, you know, managed teams through change and organisational shifts and changes. How have you gone about doing that?
So we're about to go through another massive change. Surprise, surprise, a government department that's going through a massive reorganisation.
That's why I thought you'd be good to answer this question.
And, you know, this is the obvious. Change makes us uncomfortable. We all hear it. Nobody likes change. So, you know, part of the corporate speak is to do the whole, well, change is good, you know, but people see through that. So I think it's about during that, so making sure that people are actually informed. As a leader, when you sometimes don't really know what that change is. And I think you should be honest with your teams that, you know, you're not withholding information, you actually are not sure what that change looks like. Here's what we can do together in the meantime to kind of get through this together. And I think, you know, from my experience in the department, we have, I'll relay to you what the department's mission is. And the department's mission is to enhance the health, safety and well-being of all Victorians to lead a life they value. What I started to connect to in terms of the UGRs is that every single person who works in the department is working there because they have a passion for community, social justice. What that means in reality is that they will do whatever they need to do to put the community first. Not themselves, but put the community first. So whether it's going through change, whether it's, you know, which is, you know, change of procedures, change of clientele, all that sort of thing, that workforce will always put the community first. What does that mean for a psychologically safe and physically safe workplace? It means that they're perhaps putting themselves in harm's way. They are not seeking help. They don't see that as part of their role. They're meant to be the pillar for the community. So we wanted to do a couple of things, and we're still doing that whilst we're going through this huge change. We needed some of our leaders, those who were prepared to do exactly what Leigh just did. So we needed a few leaders, as I say, who were prepared to start telling their story. Has anybody heard Tony Walker, CEO of Ambulance Victoria, speak? Compelling man.
Yeah, good man.
Good man.
Yep.
I've heard him speak a couple of times, and he openly talks about the fact that he makes sure that he gets that checkup from the neck up. So you've got a leader front and centre saying, I'm not always coping, I'm not always, you know, on top of my game. I go and get a checkup from the neck up. So we've started to do that, because once you start to do that with your teams, it becomes okay to seek help. It encourages that early help seeking. It starts to diminish that stigma. So I think that's a really key thing, and getting people to connect in with our mission, but also realising that if they are not at their best, if they are not exercising self-care, then that community they're not going to be able to do that in the best way that they possibly can. So that's again starting to kind of nudge people starting to think about, we're not asking them to put their psychological or physical safety at risk to do their job.
Great. Thank you for your insights. I've got a question here that, Leigh, I'd like to pose to you. It's a bit of a statement first. So it states, I believe that we're more likely to comply with unhelpful UGRs. The higher our stress levels, the busier we are, and often our confidence is low. What do you think about that?
I suppose as far as going back to what Steve said in terms of organisations not putting UGRs at the forefront or culture, a lot of it comes back to what you just said. I think a lot of the time, or probably most of the time, people get caught up in the fact that it's easier just to deal with the day-to-day grind. And that's a far easier way of approaching it, because you're just dealing with the task in front of you rather than actually having culture and the UGRs being at the forefront of the way that you operate. And when you're going through a period of heightened stress, that really exposes what your culture's all about. And that's when everybody's flat out and no one's got any time to think because they're just going. That's when you see what your company's actually made of. That's what you see. That's where you see how the relationships operate. That's where that's where the systems really come into play. All of those types of things, because and a lot of organisations, that's really, you operate like that the whole time these days. I'm assuming. I know we often do. So that's where it's. That probably comes back, like I said, comes back to what Steve said. That's why it's so hard a lot of the time for people to actually put the culture at the forefront, because it's just too easy to deal with what's coming at you day to day. You just, whether it's emails or a lot of organisations will have an intranet or whatever systems they're running, and the phone calls and the clients and everything's just flying past you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You add to that all of the stress that's associated with that. Factors like mental health. I know in our organisation it's pretty standard. It's probably 1 in 3. All the stuff you got going at home, it really impacts on your productivity and all that type of stuff if you don't have the underlying culture there. So, but that's where I really think it comes out, is when you really are under the pump. And that's where you see what your organisation's actually made of.
Yeah. There's quite often a statement around, we as human beings, the negativity and any negative comments or criticisms or incivility or whatever, that sticks to us. Whereas the positive, when you give somebody a compliment, when you acknowledge their great work, their great contribution, often people will dismiss it and not actually take it on board. And I wonder if that's the same with UGRs, is that we tend to gravitate towards, Steve, those unhelpful or negative ones that might be percolating inside a team or an organisation, and not necessarily, unless now that we've got our eyes to them and open, cursed for forever, as you've said, to actually look at those positives. So can you make any comments?
Newspapers don't have too much positive news in them, do they?
No.
So that tells me that maybe we're wired this way.
Yeah, we are.
Wired to focus on the negatives, which means as leaders in our businesses, we've got to work harder at this to fight against the natural human inclination towards the negative. And that's not to deny the negative. We've got to be transparent about. It's a really delicate balance that I think leaders have got to run, because it's not always a good news story, and yet leaders have typically feel obliged to put positive spin on stuff. So it's a real delicate balance. Do we spin everything and start sounding like politicians? No, we don't want to go that far. So it's a balance about being genuine and transparent, but always fighting for the positives. And in the absence of fighting for a great culture, you're leaving your culture to chance. Mm-hmm. And odds on, the risk is spiralling downwards. So, even if you've got a great culture, I did some work with Boost Juice, and the then CEO I really admired him because he said, I'm really fearful of complacency. We've got a great culture, but I'm scared that we just take it for granted. So even in great cultures, you know, I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to continually fight and never be comfortable. That's something that characterises the Kmart leadership team. They have never been comfortable with their existing culture. Never. Even though it's brilliant. Always, you know, I don't know. So we've got to fight for this. That's the short story, short version.
So a practical follow-up question to that is how, as a leader, you've just run a meeting, you've stepped outside the meeting, you've observed the chitter-chatter that happens with those people who've been in the meeting. How do you actually unpack what's actually going on there if you're not part of that inner circle of what happens outside the meeting room? So what is it that you could be doing to get to the bottom of those UGRs that, you know, don't happen inside the meeting room, that actually happen outside the meeting room? Any suggestions, any tips?
I was working with a funeral company. It's a very interesting job. They have very interesting strategies for getting feedback from their customers. There's a joke there too, but anyway. It's a shame I have to tell you I'm telling jokes, isn't it? Doris heads up this company. She's brilliant. She's smart. She's a great leader. Did UGR's work with them. I have a phone call with Doris. She says, we've got a beat. I said, what are you talking about? She says, we've got this culture game beat. I said, what are you talking about? She says, I wasn't even in the premises. 2 of my staff. I heard this story secondhand. One staff pulls out the filing cabinet drawer and one of the tabs that labels the suspension files reads management guff. The other staff member says, do you reckon that's the right thing to do given our UGRs? She says, yeah, you're right, I'm going to change it. What's my point? Staff ownership is critical here. Staff ownership. Leaders are primarily, but not solely, responsible for the culture. That's an important distinction. Primarily, but not solely. So if you give people exposure to UGRs, it gives them language to address this. And my greatest delight is hearing UGR jokes when people are grabbing a coffee, saying, is that a UGR? So that meeting where people are chatting there, it would be my ideal for the leader to walk past and hear the comment, hang on, is that a UGR you're implying there? Keeping each other, holding each other to account, because that's when the momentum has really shifted. People are protecting the culture themselves without leader involvement.
Great.
There's probably, I've started to take what's probably more of an unconventional approach to it, because over the past probably couple of years, I've done most of the roles within the company as I've worked my way up. But as you grow and you work your way up through the structure and you actually start to manage change, which we've had quite a bit of, you become further removed from actually what actually happens on the ground. And that's something that's probably one of the biggest takeouts that I've had from the last couple of years in that regard. And there's a lot of things, if I had my time again, I would do very differently, because I was making decisions on behalf of people whose jobs I knew very little about. So that's, over the past 6 months, I've actually taken an approach where I'm stepping back into some of those roles for a short window. So might be a contract manager role if there's an opportunity to jump into it for a week to help out, or if there's a the couple of weeks ago, I jumped into a customer service role for a day, and I actually learnt what those people actually had to do. And it changes your perspective from a higher level to be able to understand when you're making change, what does that actually mean and how are you impacting on those people. But I think along the way, it helps develop that connection between the management that's over here and the people on the ground. And hopefully in that scenario, when they walk out of that meeting, you're part of that conversation because of that. So I found that to be a really useful tool. It certainly takes you outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And you get some strange looks at times, but the takeouts from that are huge. So it's a bit of a different one.
Good call.
No, I think it's a great strategy, because I think I recently had a conversation with somebody and they talked about that and they called it riding the train, and it's essentially getting on board and riding the train with your colleague whether it's in a shadowing situation or something along those lines, so that you do get to step inside their shoes.
Yeah.
And, as I was asking that question, there were a lot of people around the room nodding about, the further up in leadership you go, the further away you become from, the day-to-day challenges and opportunities, and the ways that you can actually affect change from a cultural perspective.
It's just before we go on from that, one thing I've found as a result of that, the people between, the person on that customer service opportunity that came up, there's managers between where I sit and where they sit, and that actually got them into a different headspace as well, because and since then, over the past couple of weeks, they've really changed the way that they've operated, and they've realised that they need to know what's going on to be able to help manage them. So that's probably just a byproduct that's come about.
I think we all need a few of Leighs in our organisations to shift things up. Yeah. So, Nicole, did you have anything that you wanted to add there about?
I think it's if I sort of think about that example of, post meeting and seeing those conversations, I guess, being sort of brave enough to approach a couple of those people afterwards and actually call it and say, after that meeting, I noticed that there was a bit of chatter going on. Can we have a chat about, can we talk about that? What was going on there for you? And you might do that individually or whatever. I also think a big sort of learning curve for me is a couple of times in meetings, so not with my team, but when I'm in meetings with those sort of another couple of levels above me, and being in that space and seeing or experiencing particular behaviour that is making you feel a particular way and not calling it and leaving that meeting and really sort of saying to myself, well, yes, that behaviour was not great. It made me feel a particular way, which wasn't great, which means that there were others in the room that felt that way too. But damn it, I was complicit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a leader in this organisation and I was complicit in that. What I did with that though is I took that back to my team. We talked about, that the stepping up and the being brave. Now, we all know that depending on the levels of the organisation, it can be a little tricky to call it at the time. There's such a thing as job security, but we make light of it. But it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because when I realised that, we talk about the culture and we talk about wanting to change it, and I was just complicit in not changing it.
So, Steve, if you've got that situation where, and maybe that, I don't know, and I'm not obviously wanting to imply, but if, you're in a situation where you're seeing that behaviour repeat, that negative behaviour, the UGRs repeat, and you're complicit, and then it gets to a point where you go, right, I've got to do something about this, and how do I come into shifting this when it's a longer term, it's been there well before my time, and it's, clearly got its own tracks that it's on. How do you shift that?
Okay, two thoughts. Okay, I'm working with a group a while back, and there's about 50 people in the room. One guy says something in front of the rest of the group. I knew the answer to the question I was about to give him, but I wanted to ask it in public. So I said to the guy, what you just said now, was that difficult for you to say? And he goes, I knew the answer, he goes, bloody oath. Okay? So I say, and it was a genuine comment at that point, I say, you have just taught me, and I think everyone in the room, something massive here, and it is this. Maybe we need to go into 1 or 2% levels of discomfort before we make any progress on the culture front. Okay? I'm not talking 50%, not career limiting, but 1 or 2%. And I honestly believe that. And I share that story often when I'm encouraging people to go into their 1 or 2%. And when I suspect they are, I will say to people, are you going into your 1 or 2% here? And they'll say 20%. And we've got to give them credit for that and recognise that. We've got to value that, right? So that's one angle. Another angle is I was presenting to a group of around 30 people, and at the side of the room, next to the windowsill, with his arm rested on the windowsill, is an older bloke, my age, right? Old bloke. Sat there like this, the worst body language you can possibly imagine, looking out the window for the first hour and a half of my presentation, right? So during the break, I said, let's call him Barry. I said, Barry, can we have a word? We went and found a private corner and we had a chat. And I said to Barry, I may be wrong in interpreting your body language, but here's the impression that I'm getting. And I explained what I felt I saw. Have I got that right? And he says, yeah, you got it right. And then we got to a point where there was a massive breakthrough with Barry. I said to Barry, so mate, have you always been like this? And that was a circuit breaker for him. And it's almost as though he physically changed. He said, he said this, he said, shit, I haven't been. I never used to be like this. And we had a massive, rich conversation after that point. And I said to him, mate, you're free to go. You know, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. But it's your choice, you know. And he stayed and he turned 180 degrees. Now, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is I told Jody 2 levels above him of this story. And Jody was distraught. And I said, Jody, what are you concerned about? She said, Steve, I've seen Barry do this on 30 occasions when I've been the person out front and I've done nothing, right? It's your complicit issue here, Nicole. So I think one of the reasons that culture is not tackled is because the hard issues are difficult to tackle. Yeah. And I say to you, it's time to go 1 or 2% and start to tackle some of these tougher issues. Because Nicole is dead right. What we walk past, we sanction. If there is stuff happening now that you disapprove of and you do nothing, the UGR is that's okay. So 1 or 2%, do something about it. Or not. Because doing nothing sustains the prevailing UGRs.
What a fantastic way to finish this incredible panel. So thank you all very much. I really want to acknowledge Steve, Leigh and Nicole for your contribution this morning. And to our audience and everyone who has posted questions, it's been fabulous to have them all come through, and there's, I'm sorry, a lot we didn't get to. But judging from the high quality of the conversations that we've had this morning and the genuine desire for a great level of knowledge and practical strategies, I'm wondering, you know, what you as leaders can be taking back into your workplaces today to help yourself as well as the people around you thrive and be their very best. To help you further on this journey, you'll notice that at the back of the room, or as you're exiting from the room today, you'll find a copy of SuperFriend's Building Thriving Workplaces Guidelines, which is that orange book that Steve kindly put up on in his presentation. There's also another resource that I think is one of the most practical, hands-on, best resources for any leader, and that is a resource from Great West Life. It's a Canadian resource that we have permission to utilise here in Australia, called Building Stronger Teams. So there's a whole range between those 2 resources of really super practical tips, meeting agendas, how to actually start some of these brave conversations we need to be having. My very favourite from the Building Stronger Teams is the mistake meetings, a fantastic way to actually start to get into that level of discomfort as a leader and role model that for your organisations. Building Thriving Workplaces also offers strategies for both harnessing leadership and creating positive workplace culture, as well as fostering connectedness, creating and implementing policies, and supporting workplace and worker capability. To assist in building further on everything we've been discussing this morning with Steve and the panel today, the Building Stronger Teams has a fantastic section which activities to help promote civility and respect in your team. And this is one of my favourite resources, as I've mentioned. We found in our research at SuperFriend from our 2018 Indicators of a Thriving Workplace survey that there is significant benefits to leaders in creating positive cultures, which is what we've been talking about. Positive leadership and positive organisational cultures are 2 of the 5 domains that are critical to having a thriving workplace. So if you could please join me and thank our panel this morning. I know Claire Amys is about to give the vote of thanks, but personally I want to say thank you for your courage and bravery to be up here this morning. If you would like any of the resources that I have mentioned and you are viewing this morning's presentation online, they are available from the Collaborations Resource Centre at leadingwellvic.com.au/resource centre. So please join me in thanking our panel this morning. We really appreciate, and I'll hand over to Claire.